Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. We are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show, the Montreal Canadiens Stanley Cup semifinals edition. Absolutely huge victory for the Montreal Canadiens. Two dominating performances back-to-back. They only won one of them, but they win the right one tonight to go up in the series. Want to talk all about it, so the first thing we got to do is bring in my main man, Kenny. Here he comes. Kenny, how are you doing? They are showing up in droves. We're about to cross. There we go. We just crossed 300 viewers here. And I think I know why there are so many people here right out of the gate. There's people here to show up and tell us how wrong we were about the missed opportunity in Game 4 by the Montreal Canadiens. Both of us, and, including Mitch Peacock, and someone makes a comment down here in the comment section at one point. We'll get to it, about Mitch and us, basically believing that was a missed opportunity, that maybe the Montreal Canadiens were in a little bit of trouble. The Montreal Canadiens didn't look to have any trouble tonight doing what they did. What did you see? What stood out in that game?
Oh, just another absolutely impressive effort by the Montreal Canadiens, the team that has got no respect so far.
Yeah, from us. Look, the Habs are going to make it to the Stanley Cup, and not even Sean Reynolds or Ken Wiebe can stop them, as hard as we've tried, Ken.
Well, I'm not trying to stop anybody right here. I'm not trying to stop anybody. Nick Suzuki, another just absolutely dynamite performance. 3 points again here this evening, and just an absolute force, Sean. We talked about how they were probably outplayed, I think, in Game 4. We know they were outplayed in Game 4, which was a rarity. Tyler Toffoli had 2 tough games by the standards that he has set. He came up with an important game, and even 2 secondary assists, and then getting one on the empty netter. I mean, the important thing, Toffoli doesn't panic. He is responsible for the icing right before he helps get Suzuki the empty net goal. So I'm impressed by that. We know that Toffoli is a great veteran leader on that team. We know the kids are absolutely flying, but Eric Stahl, another great goal, and that fourth line has just absolutely been fantastic in this series. Again, Armia really doing a nice job tonight.
He was great.
Cannot say enough how impressed I am by the effort. And the Canadiens' defense has been excellent in these playoffs, and man, Sean, Joel Edmondson, just absolutely another strong performance on that back end. I'm so impressed by this bounce back, and I know we talked about it before, Sean. Some folks don't like the comparison to the St. Louis Blues, and no, they're not the same team, and I am not saying that for 1 second. They're the same, but there are so many parallels in how these guys play and how they're able to bounce back from tough defeats, which is the only way you could describe Game 4. That was a massive missed opportunity, but instead of folding, they come back with their most impressive game of this series, and now they've pushed the Vegas Golden Knights to the brink for the second time in these Stanley Cup playoffs.
You know what? You talk about the St. Louis Blues. I think we both think that, and we both covered the St. Louis Blues for at least 2 rounds of their Stanley Cup run.
Yep.
And the one thing that I've seen, and I think it bodes well for the Montreal Canadiens going forward, but the one thing that I've seen, this was my take on the St. Louis Blues, and everyone talks about how close the Winnipeg Jets were to, to winning that series, that first round, and who knows what would have happened. We're hearing it right now. Someone was saying, who knows where the Winnipeg Jets would be right now had Mark Scheifele got hurt his 4-game suspension. I fully believe they'd be right where they are right now. Maybe they would have played an extra game or something like that, but this Montreal Canadiens team has looked the exact same ever since Game 5 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've been looking very, very similar. They've had one game, I think, that has kind of been a stinker since then. That's Game 1 against Vegas. But other than that, they have looked and competed really, really hard. They remind me of the Blues because of exactly some of the things that we saw here tonight, in that the Blues that year made teams give up. If you saw the end of the series for the Winnipeg Jets against the Blues, the end of the series against Dallas, who took them to double overtime in that game 7, but got vastly outplayed in that game, and their goaltender Ben Bishop held them in there. The Sharks tapped out. Boston Bruins didn't have much left in game 7. The St. Louis Blues just inexorably wore on you and wore you down, and I felt like we saw some of that tonight with the Montreal Canadiens against the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, to me, yes, they lost the last game, but for me, this is 2 straight dominating performances by the Winnipeg Jets against the Vegas Golden Knights. And my question becomes, do you think that Vegas's belief is shaken heading into Game 6?
Yeah, I'd be careful on that, Sean. I mean, I know that they didn't play well in either one of the games. They did rally late, but I mean, Vegas has a lot of experience. I don't think for 1 second they're going to roll over in Game 6. No, I mean, I watched the Zoom calls. Pete DeBoer talked a lot about their team needing to win one game. Marc-Andre Fleury, everyone who went to the podium. Braden McNabb, quick to say it's a best of 7 for a reason. They win one game, they'll take their chances in a Game 7. They've already had to survive one Game 7 this year. The task is difficult. I mean, Vegas did not do enough well. They did not execute. They made poor decisions. The Canadiens forced them into a lot of poor decisions. They were poor defensively. They did not do a good enough job in terms of their defensive zone coverage. They made some uncharacteristic turnovers and errors, but this isn't a team that's going to just fray and fracture to me, Sean. I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights are a very good team. They played their worst game of the series tonight, so I would expect them to respond in a similar manner to how the Montreal Canadiens responded tonight. But you got to show it, right? I mean, the one thing, the Pete DeBoer was asked about Mark Stone. Mark Stone made a bad decision and a bad play, turning the puck over on the shorthanded situation that led to Cole Caulfield's goal. This is not a night where we're going to pile on people. This is about our response. So to me, I expect them to respond in kind. I think there are some big decisions ahead. Let's get right to it. I mean,
here before we do that, I just want
to between the pipes.
Hold on. Just before we do that, I just want to say to Eric Engels fans, this is going out on Eric Engels' Twitter account as well. Eric had said he wasn't sure whether or not he was going to be able to make the post game, and then at one point he was like, "Send me that link." You can tell after that game he wants to get on here and talk about it. So if you're here from Eric Engels' Twitter link, he's going to be joining the show to break things down. Stick around. You can ask him a question, anything you need to. This is your access to him after the game to talk everything Montreal Canadiens. So stick around for that. Ken, let's get into the goaltending. Well, first of all, let's start from the back end of it. What did you think of the decision to bring Fleury in after a phenomenal performance by Robin Lehner in Game 4?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we did discuss this at the end of last game. I thought Lehner would stay between the pipes. I think it was one of those situations where I know that this wasn't Pete DeBoer handing Lehner the remainder of the series after that, but after winning a game, when you're asked to come out of the bullpen, I personally think I thought he was going to stick with him. I understand why you would go back to your number one guy, but I don't blame Marc-Andre Fleury one bit for the game tonight, but you just had a goalie that went on the road and won the game. So to me, I think there's got to be some temptation to go to Lehner right now for Game 6. I don't know what he's going to do. We certainly know he's not going to announce it publicly. But I think it's all about how they respond in front of whoever is between the pipes. I think we know, obviously, Max Pacioretty got an important goal off a face-off today. That was the first technically top six goal, but he was playing on the third line, so you can't even really talk about it being a top six goal. But it was an important goal for Pacioretty. We know Mark Stone needs to do more. Riley Smith frustrated again. That's a good one. William Karlsson, not good enough tonight. I didn't like his game. Marchessault got a bump up to the top line. It didn't help. There was obviously some frustration being shown throughout the game by the Vegas Golden Knights, but you have to give credit to the Montreal Canadiens. They did an unbelievable job at all of the things that they've done throughout this entire playoff run. All of the North Division is terrible comments, and commenters are starting to have to kind of hide in the back of the forest here. I mean, it doesn't mean that all the teams in the North were great, but it does mean that the Montreal Canadiens are a deserving hockey team. They've been excellent at what they do. They roll 4 lines, and when they score first, they almost never give up the lead. And that, Pete DeBoer said it, that is not a winning formula for us, giving up the first goal, because they just get frustrated. They were incredibly frustrated. They could not get a bump from their power play. And another important thing happened tonight. We know that Philip Deneau has been great in the series. So has Brendan Gallagher. Deneau does not get an assist on the Stahl goal, but the goal doesn't happen without him. His ability to provide the safety valve exit in the middle at the start of that play is the reason that play happens. And on a night where Suzuki and Kotkaniemi were outstanding, the young kids were great, but the veteran centermen on that team were fantastic in this game. Stahl and Deneau, once again, tremendous. And you could tell Mark Stone rocked Deneau on that play, but he saw him coming. He makes the play to the boards. He gets rocked. You know what it meant to him by the way he celebrated after the goal was scored. And you could see it. You were on the Habs Zoom calls. He was fired up about how that game went. I'm impressed by that. Cole Caulfield, I'm incredibly impressed by his ability to fire himself up, speak publicly about what Leonard said, and score in at a different place to bar down or 5-hole with a perfect shot. I mean, that was just absolutely great execution. You talked about a great job by Corey Perry to get that backhand. I don't think that people understand how tough that backhand pass across his body to a trailer was. And as you mentioned when we were talking during the game, great head fake when everyone looked like they were over pursuing to Perry. He sells it and gets it over, and it's just an absolutely a beautiful play. But man, you have to be impressed by what you saw from the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, it just was a dominant effort.
Yeah, the fake there is, and it's funny, who'd made the point in the I think it was Bieksa who made the point in the broadcast that Corey Perry, they thought that he was on at the tail end of a shift, and that's why he was so slow. And it's like, no, Corey Perry is just that slow when when he's not up to speed. But I thought it was great because he made the perfect fake. His body language is saying, I don't think that, or I know I'm going to be caught, so I'm going to try and get as close as I can and try and get a shot off, right? So those two players are following him up, trying to catch him and get a stick on the shot. And Fleury is fully committed to the shot because he thinks it's the only play. And then the head fake thrown in there is that last little chef's kiss to sell that play. Yeah. And suddenly the backhand pass, and boom, it's in the back of the net. That play by Corey Perry was absolutely world-class, astounding, and came at such an important part of the game. And I wonder about, so we had talked about Mark Stone and how we felt that, I mean, you got to give the Montreal Canadiens credit. Mark Stone may be the last guy in the entire NHL that you would expect to make that mistake and then get caught a little bit, slacking on the back check and probably get zoned in on watching what Corey Perry is going to do, because again, Corey Perry makes everyone on the ice think that his only option is shooting. But give the Montreal Canadiens credit. You had touched on this a little bit earlier. They were absolutely dominant in the neutral zone, sealing off the walls, turning over pucks. When they turned over pucks, there were back checkers who were picking up those pucks and taking it quickly back the other way. And Mark Stone gets into a situation where, he's frustrated already. Never mind frustrated after the goal, slamming his stick and slamming the door when he gets into the bench. He's already frustrated, and it's why he tries to make the wrong play. The definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Well, sometimes that works against you when you're a hockey player, because coaches are building a plan saying we just need to stick to the game plan and we're going to get to where we want to go, right? The thing about a team like the Montreal Canadiens, the way they're playing right now, is if you're Vegas, you got one goal last game, and you get one in overtime, and then you hadn't had any goals tonight. It's starting to feel really dry for them, especially the forwards. The defensemen are getting in on the action, but it's feeling really dry for the forwards. They're not getting opportunities, and they're not scoring. So you get Mark Stone thinking, as you and I were talking about before we got on to the call here, Mark Stone is thinking, well, I'm going to try and skate it in. I'm going to try and do something new because what we're doing isn't working. But The problem with that is when a team is really frustrating you defensively and you try to do something new, often what you're trying to do new is the wrong play. It's the incorrect play. And the Canadiens are forcing teams into the incorrect play. They forced Mark Stone into the incorrect play there, and it ends up going the other way and being an absolutely huge goal for the Canadiens.
For sure. One thing I would say, I know that I don't think it was a bad back check by Stone. I think he was at the end of a long shift, and it was not an odd man situation. White Cloud was already there with Caulfield, so for me, I don't get on Stone extra for a lack of a back check. I don't necessarily think. Sure, of course, when you turn the puck over, you want to be hustling back, and I think that he was. But I think the play should have been sorted out on that. But kind of White Cloud got caught, kind of looking over to Perry and wondering if he had to maybe cheat over that way. So. Yeah, man, you're right. I mean, I expect Mark Stone to play his best game of the series in Game 6. He's had a tough series. There's no doubt about that. The checking of Deno has been absolutely sensational. Somebody had asked about Stevenson's game. I thought there were spurts for Stevenson where he looked really good. I don't think I didn't like the flyby at all on the stall goal. I thought he was in a good position, and then he took a wide berth behind the net where he should have probably stopped and started and gone to the front of the net instead. I think that was probably something where just a matter of a guy who hadn't played for a couple games and has coming off an injury, and I think he just kind of lost track of where he was for that split second and lost his man, and Martinez couldn't get out quickly enough, and Stevenson took a little bit of a wide turn, and it ended up in the back of the net. Overall, in terms of, I just don't know, I mean, it would have been almost impossible for, we don't know what he's dealing with, but if it was serious enough that he missed that much time, it's hard to expect a guy to come back in the lineup and score 2 or 3 goals. I mean, that just isn't the way that it works. I mean, we know that everyone is battling through injuries. I mean, we talked about Corey Perry just a minute ago. Great camera work by the crew. He obviously is dealing with something on his hand or wrist in addition to the zipper he's got on the nose. You saw it when he looked at it between the tunnel at one point and when his glove was off. So, man, I mean, guys are battling through everything, but I mean, I don't think this was it's certainly not going to be something I pin on Chandler Stevenson for not being able to deliver a 2 or 3 goal performance. But on the flip side, boy, oh boy, Suzuki just absolutely awesome. He's had a great series. I mean, another thing too, sorry, we're talking about the young guys, Sean. We talked so much about Suzuki, and deservedly so in this series. Kotkaniemi's ability to respond to it was a poor play on the goal. Like, this is something where he got lost on the play, ends up in the back of the net on Nicholas Waugh's overtime winner. He over pursued the puck and caught in a bad situation. But again, instead of folding the tent, he comes back with an outstanding effort. That line was great tonight. Paul Byron again flying around, Anderson breakaway to start that first goal, and Kotkaniemi getting to the net and delivering that rebound. I mean, I am so impressed by the way he responded. There was a great camera work, great picture on the bench of those two with their arms around one another, those two young Canadiens centermen who are doing so great in this series, like just exuding passion and happiness. And you saw it with Caulfield too. These guys love the game so much. I love the veterans that they brought in. We talked about Edmondson, the winners. You bring in Corey Perry, a guy who's won. You bring in an Eric Stahl who's had a frustrating year but wants nothing more than to finish a frustrating year by trying to win it all or getting another chance. But man, Montreal just an outstanding effort. And Ben Sherratt, again, former Jet, had a fantastic game on the back end tonight, I thought.
Yeah. Hey, I want to get into a couple other things, but Arish is asking. He's asked twice for the headband, so you got it, Arish. Here it comes. Here's Sean's headband. Nicely done, Arish. I thought I was going to get away with it tonight, but I'm going to be honest. I snuck past it. I saw his comment earlier on. I snuck past it, but he came back to it. If he's willing to circle back, we got to bring him back in there. But hold on, before you get to that, I want to circle back to what you were saying before. I was very vocal in the last Kenny and Renny about Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Cole Caulfield and believing that their mistakes cost the Canadiens a game that they should have won, that I thought was going to put them in a real pickle in this series. But I'll say this, those two players responded tonight, right? Jesperi Kotkaniemi ends the last game making the incorrect play and costing the Montreal Canadiens the game, and starts the next game with a goal. You can't ask for a better bounce back than that. And Cole Caulfield, not only do I think he's got that issue with the game tying goal, you and I have a little bit of a differing opinion on that. But not only that, but he doesn't score the go-ahead goal and then gets beaked by the other team's goaltender and starts out just absolutely phenomenally. Give those guys credit. That's a bounce back that you don't often see from young players like that. And you talked about the youth on this Montreal Canadiens team. The youth that they have is showing to be a special group of youth on this team, because they are playing like veterans, carrying a huge load on this team and bouncing back like a lot of young players typically don't bounce back.
Yeah, it's just awesome to watch. And, these guys, like I said, their love and enthusiasm for the game is just so fantastic. I just want to touch on something. We talked about this early on in the series. When Dom Ducharme had that conversation with Kotkaniemi on the bench, like how calm he was in his delivery, saying, you can't turn the puck over there, but he wasn't berating him. He wasn't all over him. Even though the bench is now being handled by Luke Richardson and Alex Burrows and Sean Burke. But boy, oh boy, you have to love the way that they have been handled. And hey, there's a lot of comparisons to the Jets. The young players are doing an unreal job, no doubt about it. There is still a very important young player who is parked in the press box in this series, which is probably driving some people nuts. But once again, Eric Gustafsson, who is running that first power play, I think he was still on the ice when Caulfield scored. So, I mean, things happen at different paces for different people, but I think that we won't be having many of these conversations about Samberg and Heinola next year, because they're going to be key contributors. But just a reminder that not all the young players are playing, but the ones that are playing have been absolutely awesome. But the other part of the equation that people should remember, Kotkaniemi's not where he is today without going back to the American Hockey League last year, where so many Canadiens fans were calling him a bust because he was not currently lighting it up in the National Hockey League. So it's just always it's important to remember the entire process in terms of how things have been handled, and that's just part of the deal.
Yeah, Kotkaniemi, I think it's funny because he was so good in the playoffs last year, and Todd Woodcroft talked about him on one of our Kenny and Renny shows, and just his ability to kind of grind and do those things. There's still those flashes, and he's a young player. You can expect them. I thought it was interesting. He went back to Finland in the offseason and played hockey over there. And I thought that was going to be bad for him. He wasn't performing that well. I think everyone was expecting him to go over there and kind of absolutely tear it up. We were watching Ville Heinola go back up there and do really, really well. So you're expecting, if a younger player like Ville Heinola was doing that well, that Kotkaniemi after a breakout playoffs would really take off. I thought it was going to be problematic for him, and maybe it carried into the season, but I think he's just showing right off the bat that he's one of these. He knows how to show up at the right time. I mean, give it credit. Nick Suzuki, I think, has already proved beyond a doubt that he's going to be a gamer for the rest of his career. He's shown that in the playoffs, he did it last year. He's done it now. This is the kind of guy that is going to show up when you need him to, right at the right time. And it's interesting because you're starting to see the same thing from Cole Caulfield. You're seeing it from Jesperi Kotkaniemi. The youth on this team, again, I wonder, I don't see them being this high-scoring core the way the Winnipeg Jets have put together. But boy, oh boy, do they know how to compete and to do that at the right time. It makes you think that the future is really bright for the Montreal Canadiens, never mind the immediate present.
For sure, but I mean, 2 months ago, people wanted Dom Ducharme fired, right? I mean, the way they kind of faded into the playoffs, it's just a reminder that sometimes you gotta just let things play themselves out. Ducharme has done an excellent job. I love the way that Luke Richardson is handling himself. He's been doing such a fantastic job. And I know someone mentioned earlier that Vegas gave up on Suzuki. I mean, That's completely not true. They didn't give up on Nick Suzuki. They traded for a 40-goal scorer, and they had to give up a really good player. It's like when they gave up on Brandstrom, who was their best prospect, that's what it takes to get a Mark Stone out of Ottawa. So I don't share the same opinions. I mean, yes, they traded a player that they didn't want to give up, and right now Suzuki is playing much better than Pacioretty. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But I don't think that was, I would never call that giving up on a player. I mean, you could argue that at the time they held Cody Glass higher on their depth chart than Suzuki, but I don't think in either way that they gave up on the player. Kotkaniemi's been really good in terms of being physical, Sean, in this series. He gets very involved. And I mean, let's not pretend he had a great year. He had 5 goals during the year. He has 5 in the playoffs. So you're right. Yeah. He is a guy that has shown he can elevate when the chips are down, and that's what every team needs.
Yeah. Let's get into one of the issues that we've talked about with this Montreal Canadiens team, the coaching-wise, their inability to stop the chances that Vegas is getting off the face-off. I mean, the Max Pacioretty goal, you and I had talked on our Sound On chat. The amount of time that he has there, the amount of room he has to skate into that shot and into the high slot, it just seems unacceptable. Now, maybe, okay, it's 3-0 in the game. Maybe I'm making too big of a deal out of it. But this, to me, is something that hasn't been fixed in the series, and it's been a problem right since the very beginning. If Vegas, I mean, how big of a problem do you see it being in this final game or these final 2 games? Because it's how Vegas is scoring. Now, maybe, and I don't know, before you answer, I guess I'll preface this by saying I asked Dom Ducharme about this earlier in the series, and his response had essentially been, listen, you got to pick your poison, and this is the poison that they were going to pick. They talked about it in the broadcast, and when we see them continue to score and score and score on this, it seems like it's the wrong poison to pick. But if you're saying we're going to give something up, and this is what we've chosen to give up, and you're up 3-2 in the series after, losing a game that you probably should have won, maybe it's as simple as that balance. Maybe they're entirely okay with that continuing. Do you see them fixing that problem before this is said and done, and do you see it costing them if they don't fix it?
Well, it's certainly a correctable issue, right? I mean, that would be the first thing that I would say. Has it cost them to this point? Well, no. Like you said, they're up 3-2 in the series, so it hasn't cost them. But has it cost them goals? Of course. And I mean, they are issues that can be solved. Today, I know where you're coming from, and I think it was more a matter of I don't think it was a missed assignment getting to. I think it was just such a confusing play because of the way that you almost never see a player whiff, especially a guy who is as accurate and adept at shooting as Max Pacioretty. I think the initial player, I think it must be Byron because he's the closest guy there. I think that he probably thought that the first shot was going to be through, but by the time he noticed that Pacioretty still had the puck, it was too late to get in the shot lane. So I don't think this was necessarily as much a coverage issue as the ones earlier when, Pietrangelo snuck down the wall. But you saw it. I mean, a couple shifts after they gave up the goal, they had another face-off play that led to an incredible scoring chance. But, I mean, I think our job is to nitpick, and I think right now we're picking nits because right now about the only thing they are giving up are face-off plays. But even having given up face-off plays, they're still keeping almost all of Vegas's biggest weapons off the board. So, I mean, it's an issue. They could correct. It's a correctable issue that I think they can solve. But right now, I think that what they've done in terms of blanketing their opponent has been so impressive. And, I think they've done a lot more good things than poor in this series. Having said that, they're still going to have to play. I think they still will have to raise their level in order to win the series. And we talked about it before the game. I was contending quite strongly that I didn't think Montreal could win the series without an offensive contribution from Brendan Gallagher, who was once again fantastic tonight, or Philip Deneau. Tonight, I would say that Philip Deneau made a contribution, even though he doesn't get credit for the third assist, but he made the most important play on that goal. So I think that those guys have just been excellent in this series and clutch play. I mean, that's what the Canadiens are delivering. And I don't think you can say enough about the job that Shea Weber and Jeff Petrie are doing with basically one hand. in these playoffs. The ability to, I know we always draw the parallels to the Jets. I mean, the Jets need some size on the back end. They need I'm not saying they're going to get Ben Sherratt. They need someone like that. We talked about Joel Edmondson. He would have been a perfect fit for the Winnipeg Jets, and you have to give credit to Marc Bergevin for being willing to send out a 5th-round draft pick to get the exclusive rights to try to sign him from the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that was one of the... He made a lot of great moves this year, and that was one of the under-the-radar moves. And it was one that was not met with wide acclaim in Montreal. We talked about it with Eric Engels earlier this series. Joel had a bit of a tough year in Carolina. His underlying numbers were not good, but what he does in terms of his ability to be a big and bruising player, but also be mobile and keep the front of the net clear and provide that physical nature that not nearly enough defense corps have, has been such an important addition to the Montreal Canadiens defense, who already had 3 big, strong, burly guys, right? Brett Kulak played great for Montreal last year, but he can't even get in the lineup right now. That's how good a job that Edmondson has done in really giving that back end a boost.
Well, we talked about it through the Jets series. It was the big 4, right? The Montreal's big 4. You couldn't get by those guys, and I mean, so we've talked about. It's funny because I think Joel Edmondson would have been a player that the Jets would have really liked to target. Montreal stepped up to make sure that they were going to get an exclusive window to go with them. Joel Edmondson talked about them making that move to get that exclusive window and how much he appreciated it. Sorry, Kenny, I stole that away from you there. Okay. And I mean, they got brave, they made a move, and they got their guy. I think there's just so many. We think about it more and more. We talked about Joel Armia and how good he looked out there tonight. We talked about Nick Suzuki, who went in that Jets spot where they would have drafted had they not made their move with Vegas. We talked about Joel Edmondson, who's a Manitoba guy who maybe, if Kevin Cheveldayoff would have made overtures and traded a pick to go get that exclusive right to negotiate with him, maybe he'd be here as well. You talk about Ben Sherratt and how well he played. There are plenty of reasons to look at this Montreal Canadiens team and kind of stab yourself under the table with a fork if you're the Winnipeg Jets or a Winnipeg Jets fan, because there's a lot of guys who were either on that Jets roster and they moved on from. I mean, Joel Armia is that guy that they move along to try and
bring back Paul Stastny, basically.
Exactly.
Clear the money out to try to
they're clearing up money. So I mean, these are all these tiny little moves that are made that are really, really paying off for the Montreal Canadiens. And hey, maybe here's the move that pays off most, as someone had mentioned it in our chat room here, when they were trying to get Pierre-Luc Dubois. The ask was Nick Suzuki, right? And I'm not sure what else was in there.
Those were the guys being asked for, Caulfield and Suzuki both.
Right.
I mean, not both, but in one of the other.
Part of the package. Those were one of the elements that they wanted involved. I remember when I heard that the ask was Nick Suzuki, I had turned around once I heard that, and I said, because I've said it a couple of times, I covered some for Hockey Night in Canada. I covered some Montreal Canadiens games in the last couple of years, last year, and saw Nick Suzuki play and thought, I'm sure you heard me say this. I think that, and I think he's already there, but I thought Nick Suzuki was going to be a special player. And I remember saying early on that Jets fans were going to lament him not being picked in that spot by the Winnipeg Jets. He's been absolutely phenomenal. But I had said at that point, the Montreal Canadiens know what they have in Nick Suzuki, and they were not letting him go as part of a package for Pierre-Luc Dubois. That was a deal breaker. It was not happening once that ask happened. And at least in the now, in the here and now, it was definitely the right move to make, especially considering, never mind the problems that Pierre-Luc Dubois had this year, and never mind the fact that we've seen Nick Suzuki get it done in the past 2 playoffs, but Nick Suzuki is the younger of the 2 players. So yeah, he's not big and rugged in the traditional sense of what we expect from NHL centers and what we expect big NHL centers to be able to compete and succeed in the playoffs. Nick Suzuki is showing his grit as getting it done in the playoffs regardless.
Yeah, no doubt. And this thing too, I totally don't agree with this at all. I mean, every GM has to get lucky to a degree. I mean, but if the bargain bin was ripe with quality players, you have to get the right quality players. I mean, everybody had the opportunity to get those players, right? I mean, I don't agree with that premise.
Well, the Corey Perry pickup alone explains it. Like, how huge was Corey Perry
right
in that Dallas run last year? Like, he's not getting credit. And I know Julie Sue is in here, and Julie Sue cannot bring herself to cheer for the Montreal Canadiens because she despises Corey Perry that much. I would say, Julie, if you can just take a look, and I get it, there's if you go back to the 2015 series when he was with the Anaheim Ducks. If you're a Jets fan, you have reason to hate him there. Any team that has played a Corey Perry team in the playoffs and lost to them has reason to hate Corey Perry because of what he does. He's phenomenal at what he does. If you take a look at the impact that he has on the game, it's one of these things, Julie. You can hate Corey Perry and maybe you can not cheer for the team that he's on, but you have got to give this player massive respect because I was saying, Ken, I don't think he's had a whiff one game in these playoffs. In games that the Montreal Canadiens have either not played well or not got out to a good start, like in game 3, which they end up winning, if you're looking for the Montreal Canadiens players who were pulling on the rope in that game, I thought he was leading the charge. He was the guy on the front end pulling that rope and getting other players going. There's not a night in the playoffs that I have not seen him contribute.
It's been awesome. And the other part to remember too, I mean, Perry started the year on the taxi squad, right? So, yeah. I mean, it's, of course there was some, you had to get lucky to a degree, yes, but Marc Bergevin has, I mean, a guy like Michael Frolik could play on that fourth line and they wouldn't miss a beat, right? I mean, that's the other part. I mean, they have a lot of backup plans that are ready to roll. So Perry's been great. And the things that we don't see are the things that are, even more important, as important as what he is doing on the ice. Yeah, I mean, could the Jets have signed Corey Perry? Well, probably not for $750, but I mean, the guy grew up a Habs fan, I think, going back to the stories that we had heard, right? I mean, that was part of the allure for him. So again, that's not what we're talking about here, but we're talking about a guy who's been excellent. He did a great job this year. I mean, he had to be patient. He was patient, and when he got in, he was on the fourth line. I mean, Corey Perry's not a fourth line player, but he finds a way to still make an impact on the game. He's on their first power play. He knows what he does well. Corey Perry's not going end to end. Corey Perry is not dangling a lot of people, even though he has great hands. He thrives around the paint. He wins puck battles down low, and he makes smart decisions. He doesn't turn the puck over in bad places, and he makes a lot of smart moves. Yes, hey, there's a great one here by Curtis. Right? Tyler Toffoli, great pickup by Marc Bergevin. Vancouver has been absolutely crushed this year for not keeping him. Toffoli is a big loss for Vancouver, and he's been fantastic. But here's the other part. When a player like Tyler Toffoli has to take less money, he had a little extra fire, right? I mean, he had a little extra fire in the pants to get rolling and to have a great year, and he's been absolutely awesome. But the combination, the blend, we've talked about it, the blend of experience and young players on this team and getting contributions from everyone, that's one of the big reasons why the Montreal Canadiens are where they are. I thought that Toffoli's had a great year. He had 2 quiet games and then responded by playing great today.
Yeah, he did, and we had, I believe we said it in this space after last game. We talked about that second line, the Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and Toffoli line, and we had said that they had been outplayed in that last game. It was the first time that it had happened, and in a game where the Canadiens were dominant, they had been outplayed. It played a factor in that game, but again, the point of their youth and how they respond. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better response from that line after getting outplayed. Toffoli was chock full of effort. Nick Suzuki has 3 points, and Cole Caulfield rips a goal that I think was an extremely important goal in that game. I mean, you cannot ask for better than what you got from those players. We should talk about the goaltending here, Ken. We should get back to it. I know we talked about it earlier, but too many people were asking earlier on where Vegas goes in the next game. Where do you go if you're Pete DeBoer?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough choice. I think he has 2 good choices to be had, but I mean, I just don't think you can ignore the fact that 1 game ago, Leonard came out of the bullpen and won the game. I know that Fleury has been outstanding this year, and it would be a tough thing for him to have to watch Game 6. But I think we're going to see Robin Lehner between the pipes in Game 6. That's not a knock on Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't think he had really much chance on any of the 3 goals tonight. I know some people in the chat said they didn't think he played well. I don't think really that the first one was a rebound after a breakaway. The second one was a basically shelf shot, and the third one was a great play cross ice, almost basically offside one-timer by Caulfield. So I don't blame goaltending one bit for Vegas. Having said that, you have one guy who won a game on the road in a very crucial game 2 days ago, and I think that Lehner is the guy that will get the call. I wouldn't bet the mortgage on it, but that's who I expect to be between the pipes. Quick one, James. Yes, I had my second shot yesterday, Moderna, to go with the AstraZeneca first shot. I feel good. I had to have a little nap in the afternoon so I could stay up late for this Kenny and Renny show, but no side effects. I didn't have the flu-like symptoms that many folks had, and feel very fortunate to have that second dose of the vaccine, and hopefully that's another step closer to normalcy. Sean, who do you expect in the pipes for Game 6? Or who would you play?
I just wanted to say there's like some Chuck Norris jokes in there. It's like Kenny doesn't get sick from the vaccine gets sick from Kenny or something like that. Because I'm always so jealous of you. You got your first dose, and I had my first dose a couple of days before you did. And that night at 10 o'clock, I had fever. I had the chills. My muscles were all achy. The next day, that was about 24 hours of that. And then the next 24 hours after that, I was, really lethargic. And I was going to go take the dogs for a walk one day. And I was like, I just don't feel like going. And then it hit me. Oh, yeah, it's that shot. And I was like, never mind. I couldn't even go for a walk that day. Kenny was like, oh, yeah, no problems at all. Everything's fine here. And so then I've been hearing all these horror stories about how much worse the second dose is. And I was waiting to hear you say like, okay, yeah, this one, I felt that one. And you're like, oh, maybe my arm's a little bit more sore than the last time. But, I had an Advil and everything's okay. You are the only one that I've heard about who didn't have trouble with the second dose, other than Eric Angles, who still is going to try and join us here in the show here. But Eric had his the same day as you, and he went out and golfed and hit 81. Eric, too, is a really good golfer. Have you ever golfed with him?
Not yet, no.
You two should get out together.
We were planning on playing at the draft, but we'll have to get to that eventually.
Yeah. So he's sounds like he's a heck of a golfer, and the way he talks about the game, he's far more knowledgeable than I am about it. So I can tell he knows what he's doing when he's out there. Back to Fleury. So I'll say this: Robin Lehner stole a game in this series, in my opinion. Fleury is 0-3 against the Canadiens in his last 3 starts. To me, it's as simple as that. If you want to boil it down, I still don't like, though, the way that Pete DeBoer has handled this situation. I didn't think he should have gone away from. Now it paid off for him, and maybe that makes me wrong, but I didn't think that was the right thing to do. I don't think that the team has been right since that happened. They look like a frustrated group. You saw on the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast, they were showing spots in the game where Fleury was skating out and giving guys the stick tap on the butt at the bench. Like, he's the guy trying to get them motivated. At some point, this team lost their motivation, and they lost it after their most dominant performance in this series so far. And yes, they lost that game, and it happened because of Fleury, but I think what Pete DeBoer did by starting Robin Lehner in that 4th game was he robbed those players of the opportunity to have Marc-Andre Fleury's back, to go out and bounce back and get him back on top of the mountain. That's what teams want to do. You'll hear it time and time again. They want to go pick up their goaltender, and they had no opportunity to do that, to go pick up their goaltender. They came out extremely flat in Game 4. Yes, they won that game, and they win it because of the goalie who replaces Marc-Andre Fleury, but I still don't discount the possibility for it to affect the mindset of the team and the players. But when it comes down to the numbers, he's lost 3 straight games against them. Robin Lehner, I believe, won them game 4. I think you have to go back to Robin Lehner. And I mean, if they lose, they lose. But at that point, if they win that game, enough's enough. Give Robin Lehner the crease. Stop playing these silly games that I think that they're playing. Give him the crease. If they win game 6, he should be starting game 7. And if they win that, he should be starting game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. And he should be given a couple games and even maybe a poor performance in a game or 2 to fight his way through it. Because this idea of flopping back and forth between the goaltenders, I think it has an effect outside the crease. And I think that's what we are seeing in this series.
Yeah, the one thing for me to counter that, Sean, I mean, we know that the relationship between Fleury and Lehner is very strong, and I think that it wouldn't be a disruption for their team. Yes, Pete DeBoer did mention the rest factor, is one of the reasons. For me, I think it was just trying to shake things up a little bit, and they have a goaltender that was their number 1 guy in the playoffs last year. He split down the stretch, they split the starts. Yeah, they're confident in both guys. It's like having 2 number 1 guys. Not very many teams have that. I don't mind it. And I would also counter too, Sean. I mean, they still had the opportunity tonight to pick up Marc-Andre Fleury, and they played their worst game of the series. So I agree with you. The chance to try to pick him up in game 4 would have made sense. But actually, I like the move to go to Lehner in game 4. I personally think they probably should have stuck with him, but I mean, I understand why they went back with him, and I'm not saying that's the reason why they lost whatsoever. But I mean, it's easy for us. I mean, the coach always has reasons for doing it, but it's our job to critique those maneuvers, and that's why we are doing so. And yeah, I mean, I'll flip to that in a second, but I think they got to go with Lehner in game 6 and then see what happens. So in terms of the booing, Braden McNabb was asked about the booing tonight, and he said flat out, "We weren't playing well. We probably deserved it." And I love that answer. And he said he doubled down on saying we have the best fans in the league. So I mean, I totally understand. I mean, when people are asked about it, but I never think that. Players aren't going to go out and say, "Oh, we have terrible fans because they booed." I mean, come on. I mean, let's go.
Well, you know what? I'll say this. I was surprised to hear it when I heard it.
And it was booing during the power play, which has been terrible. So
right.
It wasn't that they were booing the total effort. I think the boos happened
during the power play. It could have been specifically the power play, and I'll buy that. But it does not mean that I wasn't surprised when I heard it. Sure. And Ken, I always talk about this, and I've probably talked about it on Kenny and Renny before, but there's that moment in Game 4 of the Western Conference Final in 2018 when we're down there covering them against the Winnipeg Jets. And I was blown away by that crowd. I was blown away by that crowd. There was a moment where it was one of those times that the Jets had been fighting to get back into that game, and had fought back, scored a goal, and then Vegas had gone down the ice, turned around, and scored a goal right away again. And they went into a commercial break at some point, and they played Elvis's Hunka Burnin' Love. And for the TV timeout, and that place, like, it was just the perfect timing. The Jets had come back after grinding them all game, kind of playing dominant, and then finally scored to tie the game up. And Vegas just turned around, took it away from them again. The crowd had this feeling of invincibility, like I'd never really felt in a building before. They throw on Vegas Elvis, not just Elvis, but Vegas Elvis, Hunka Burnin' Love. And that place was rocking so hard, I thought that they were going to blow the roof off of it. It was a phenomenal atmosphere. And I remembered thinking, this is one of those things about that crowd, is one of those crowds where if you can have them believe, they can really be a force behind you. And I just had always been impressed by that crowd and its belief in its team. And this, you can say they're just booing the power play or whatever. The Canadiens, like I'd said, what they do is they grind teams. They make you take chances. They take belief away from you. And I think that seeped into the crowd. I think that the level of belief by the Vegas crowd in their team was seriously affected in this game here tonight. I think that the Montreal Canadiens are doing it's psychological warfare with that team. The way they play against you, it's not just them beating you. It's not them playing their system. They take away your hope. They take away your belief. It's psychological warfare, and give it to the Montreal Canadiens because they have been doing it absolutely phenomenally. I wanted to ask you
on that fan note. Sorry to interrupt. Chris was saying there had been Habs chants from it wasn't from the Vegas crowd. There was a nice section of Canadiens fans that were chanting "Go Habs, Go" in the arena. So it wasn't Vegas fans turning their back on their hometown team. And I do agree that late in the second there was frustration, but during the third they really tried to get their building going, and it is a fantastic building. And I mean, Sean, you're in Montreal. You're going to be at Game 6. I mean, great that there will be 3,500 people, but I mean, come on, like how great would it be in Montreal?
Oh my goodness!
If this is a moment where, Bell Center should be, if situation was different, and we know they're going to Code Green coming up soon, right? So hopefully those numbers can maybe go up at some point here. But man, it sure makes you long for the good old days of full buildings, and let's hope that we can continue to make some progress with this pandemic here, because boy, oh boy, a full house at the Bell Center with a chance to clinch. And we know there's a lot of people talking about 1993, and up until the last overtime win, there was another 4-0 in overtime up until the Game 4. Boy, oh boy, you see the atmosphere in the city, Sean, because you're there, but could you imagine what it would be like in a potential elimination game in Montreal right now? Boy, oh boy, that would just be absolutely fantastic.
Well, this is the thing that I don't get about all this is like okay, well, one, I believe it's Saint Jean Baptiste Day on Thursday. So that is like, you're talking about how good it would be. Never mind the chance for the Montreal Canadiens to go back to the Stanley Cup final for the first time in 28 years on Saint Jean Baptiste Day. That place would be crazy. But this is the thing that I kind of don't get about it. What everyone who was watching the game, what did you see as far as Montreal Canadiens fans throughout that game? Well, they're all in a big giant mosh pit outside the building. They're all there anyway. Like, you're not avoiding whatever you're trying to avoid on the inside of the building. It kind of doesn't seem to make sense. If we're in a place where people can gather outdoors and cram shoulder to shoulder and spend that entire time cram shoulder to shoulder in a mosh pit to watch the game outside the building, you'd think it would make sense for them to go sit down inside the building, or at least get to half capacity or whatever. But it's interesting, Ken, because I've never experienced that before in this building. I mean, no one has experienced that before in the Bell Center, because the last time they went to the Stanley Cup final, it was in the Montreal Forum. But that idea of a totally packed building, the closest I got was I covered the World Juniors here a couple of years back. The year Pierre-Luc Dubois was on that team. But it was one of those situations, and that's a debate for another time. I've been long debating that the World Juniors should go to cities again, like Winnipeg, and split between Regina and Saskatoon, and that's not happening anymore because Hockey Canada wants it in the big cities. But that building I could not believe how empty it was at very key stages throughout that tournament. And it definitely wasn't a jam-packed building for that final that they played against the U.S. So I've yet to experience that yet. So I don't know, maybe if the Montreal Canadiens make it to the next round, I'll be staying here in Montreal to cover that. If they opened up that building to them in the Stanley Cup final, I can't imagine how that would be. The closest thing I've seen other than that is I saw Chicago win in the United Center in 2015. That, I mean, is probably about as close as it gets. I mean, the Jets fans, pound for pound, if they would have gone to the Stanley Cup final, I think that would have been, I mean, that's amazing. And that's one thing I should bring up too, Ken. I'm going to say that here. I've been here. Part of my job is into the broadcast to talk about the ambience and what it's like outside the building. And it's great outside the building. But I got to say, Jets fans specifically, I was, the guy outside doing I know Scott Oak did the "It's My People" thing and then went inside the building. My job was to cover the Whiteout Street Party. That was like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, bravo, Winnipeg Jets fans. That atmosphere was I haven't been in anything like that before. In covering hockey, I've not been in an outdoor gathering like that. In fact, I haven't been one to one that even compares to it.
Yeah, so for me, I just want to bring this up quickly, and it didn't end out the way that the Vancouver Canucks wanted, but I was at Game 7 in 2011, and I was fortunate to avoid the riot. I was on the media bus afterward after filing everything, but being in the city that day, so I flew in on the morning of Game 7, went straight to the rink for the morning skate, sort of started to get the vibe, walking around town. You know, we're talking about 1993 now, but they were talking about 1993 then also. Canadian team in the final, closest they've been since 93. The buzz around the city and the buzz during the anthem. And obviously Boston sucked the air out of the balloon, or popped the air out of the balloon quite early. There was this great chance for Alex Burrows, but it bounced over his stick, and Boston came back and scored, and after that it was kind of lights out. But the atmosphere leading into that game was just absolutely sensational. And man, if you cover hockey, it's just unbelievable to be in those buildings when those moments are happening.
Yeah, for sure. Someone had asked earlier on what's the deal with Stone and Pacioretty. What are you seeing? Because like Stone is basically your prototypical guy that if anyone is going to bust through the kind of style of play that the Montreal Canadiens are playing, Mark Stone's that guy. What are the Canadiens doing to keep him off the board? He sure came close tonight.
Oh, man. I mean, he's had tons of chances during this series, especially early. I mean, it's been a little bit quieter the last couple of games, but they just do a great job of ratcheting up the defense. I mean, they've really had trouble on their entries, and a lot of that I think had to do with not having Stevenson, because he has that great speed, and that really is something that their line was missing early on in the series. You saw the frustration. I mean, Stone had the great net drive, Sean. I texted you after that. I mean, you could, anyone who is a lip reader could see the frustration on Mark Stone's face, because that's a play that he makes an outstanding job to drive the net. He goes wide of the pad. He is past the pad of Price, and probably 90 times out of 100, he's able to stuff that in outside the pad and into the net. Instead, it kind of rolls off his stick and goes into the corner. So, man, I mean, it's so bizarre. He's so frustrated, and Pacioretty wasn't even really getting any opportunities. So, for me, that was a frustrating thing. But yeah, I mean, there's pressure, sure, but I mean, those guys don't shy away from pressure. So, I mean, I don't see that as being an issue for either one of those players. Frustration, maybe squeezing the stick a little bit, but I don't see that as frustrating.
I agree with the squeezing the stick, because, I mean, another play I can think about is Riley Smith gets that cross ice pass. It's a perfect pass to finish up, and it's one of those things where he just shot it right straight back into Carey Price. Like at first, when I saw Riley Smith there, I saw the pass get there, and I saw him shoot it, and I was expecting a goal, and there wasn't a goal. I was thinking, oh my God, amazing save. And on the replay, it wasn't an amazing save. In fact, Riley Smith, if Carey Price hadn't been in the way, it may have missed the net on the far side of the net, right? And that looked like it should have been a tap in. So I don't know. I think, when you get into a scenario where you're playing a team and it starts to feel like you're only going to get one or two chances in a game, you have to have ice in your veins and drop any kind of pretense of frustration to be ready in those moments. And Riley Smith has shown that he's frustrated throughout this series. Jonathan Marchessault has shown that. Pacioretty has shown that. Stone has shown that. We've seen the Vegas Golden Knights wearing the frustration on their faces, in their body language throughout this series. And I would argue, Ken, I don't think that we saw that from them in the first two games or third game against the team that that I thought was going to be the best team in a walk to win the Stanley Cup in the Colorado Avalanche. Keep in mind, the Vegas Golden Knights were, 5 minutes away or 8 minutes away or something like that from going down 3-0 in that series and getting bounced, and then they came back and won 4 straight games. I think the reason that happens is because they're not frustrated like they were against the Montreal Canadiens here. The Montreal Canadiens, I believe, are in this team's head. I'm not saying they're out, but it's going to be It's going to be very, very tough for them. And believe me, I know I said this last game about the Montreal Canadiens, but I've seen 2 straight games now, 6 straight periods other than that overtime period, where it's looked to me like the Vegas Golden Knights look lost. They don't seem to have a lot of hope. They've made some pushes, but I think it's a tricky situation they find themselves in. They're a frustrated team. They're trying to figure this out, and they're down to, a couple of games now to try and figure this out. It's going to be tough. Not a lot of room for error. Anything you want to say
here? Yeah, sorry, just want to address this. Yeah, so 2010, my dad was at the gold medal game, not me. I was and that was also Vancouver. Sorry, those 2 of the coolest sporting experiences I had were in Vancouver. I was with my dad for the quarterfinal game, Canada-Russia. And that atmosphere inside Vancouver was just absolutely awesome. I did actually also get to go to the final 2 periods of the semi-final game as well, which was also awesome. But I did not stick around for the gold medal game. My dad was there in the end where Zach Parise scored the tying goal, and in the end where Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal. So he would tell you that's probably the best sporting moment he's ever witnessed live. But I was watching that one on TV with most of the rest of Canada.
Yeah. I think Tristan Rivers, our main man, who is responsible for the Enter Kenny music and Sean's headband, I think this is perfectly put right here. That's the Habs secret sauce. I swear they make the other team seem worse more than they make themselves seem great. I think they had some great moments tonight, most definitely. And I think there's, they've capitalized on those moments. I think about that play that Josh Anderson made on the overtime winner. The puck is flying up by his hands, and he knocks it down with the shaft of his stick into a back pass towards Paul Byron, who then makes that great pass over to him. There's been some, the Cole Caulfield goal tonight I thought was amazing. The Stahl goal, really, really good. They've done some really, really great stuff in this series, but I totally agree with this. I think they take away, and we started the show with this, like the St. Louis Blues in 2019. I think they take away teams' wills to compete. And that's, I think, as good a spot to end this as we can here. Thank you so much for everybody, for Jets Freaks. Thanks for showing up right as we're walking out the door here. Good to see you. Thanks for everyone for showing up and leaving us your comments. We really appreciate it. It was great to spend some time with you. We will be back for Game 6. Come join us afterwards. And yeah, I get it. Well, we'll most definitely, if I'm here, we'll most definitely be doing this heading into the playoffs. So stick around, enjoy you spending your time with us. Kenny, always enjoy spending time with you. Thank you so much for making some space for this, and we will see everybody next time around.